Hi everyone, it's Monday again and I'm back with another video. I think I've shown you this before a couple of times, and now I'm going to, oops, something dropped off. Now I'm going to show you how to make this. Okay? We start out with a wooden plaque, and I have sealed this wooden plaque with DecoArt Traditions multi-surface sealer. You have to do that or your paint will soak in unevenly and you'll get a very blotchy finish. Then after you have sealed it, you want to sand it a little bit because sealing raises the surface of the wood fibers. So you want to sand very well before and after sealing, actually. So you want to do that so that you have a smooth surface. Now I still have some ridges here. This is a really old plaque that I found in some old things, so I wanted to use it to demonstrate with. So it's going to take a little bit extra to get it smooth, but it's not too bad now. Let me get this top surface pretty well. It's usually best to sand with the grain, which would be this way. But sometimes when it's really rough, I like to go across the grain and then back with the grain. Okay, that's going to do okay for me now. Let me get all of that sanding dust out of the way. Okay, so then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add 4 layers of transparent paint, and it's DecoArt Traditions paint. This one is an older one. It has the old Jansen Arts label, but this is DecoArt's Traditions paint. These are all 4 transparent pigments. Transparent means you can see through them. Like if you put a black mark on a piece of white paper and you paint any one of these colors over top of it, you will be able to see your black mark through it because it's transparent. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to layer these transparent pigments in order to make this look, which looks like a mahogany stain. Okay, so it's paint. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start out first with Indian yellow, and I'm going to move my palette over here where I can reach it. Okay, and I'm going to put a little bit out on my palette. I'm going to use a large brush. Right now I'm using one of my large angles because I have packed up my other large brushes for a class I'm teaching later today. But I'm just a large brush. Any large brush will work. Okay, and I've wet it because you want to have your bristles wet before you start painting. Otherwise your paint soaks up into your bristles unevenly, the same way it does on an unsealed piece of wood. So, I'm pulling out some paint and working it into my brush. I'm not dipping straight into the puddle and pulling it out and going to my surface. I am pulling it from the edge and working it into my brush. Then I'm going to come to my surface, and because we are just covering the surface, then I can just paint it on without really worrying about boundaries or lines or anything like that. Okay, so I'm doing this, and as you can see, it is transparent because you can still see the wood grain. Okay, now I'm going to go over here to the sides. When you're painting something for yourself or for a gift or to sell, you must always paint the edges and the backs. Never ever leave your piece unfinished on the edges or the backs. Okay, I'm going to need to get a little bit more. This paint comes in 3-ounce bottles. It's very thick paint. It has beautiful loft to it, and its coverage is just wonderful. As you can see, it's taking very little paint to cover this entire plaque. And we only need one coat. Now I do want to do the back. I will do the back, but I've got to dry my top first, so I'm going to do that real quickly. You can see I'm getting it on my craft sheet, but it's okay, it comes off with water. Okay, better watch where my brush is going. Alright, then I'm just going to quickly cover the back. And what we're doing is we're building a glow of color. We're using layers to build a certain color. And because these are transparent, then this bottom layer of yellow is going to show through all the way through 4 layers. Okay, now I'm going to rinse my brush and dry this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sander once again, and I'm just going to lightly, I'm not sanding as hard as I was before, but I'm lightly sanding it because I'm trying to get a smoother surface. And you want to always make sure you get rid of your sanding dust. You don't want it to get stuck in your paint. Okay, the next color we're going to use, that was Indian yellow. This is quinacridone gold. It is also a transparent color, and I'm going to put it here on my palette. The Traditions paints you never, ever, 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 ever have to shake. They always hold together. They are a resin base, not an acrylic base. They are an acrylic paint, but they're not a polymer base. They're a resin base. And so the resin holds the suspension of the pigment. They are pure pigment paint. They do not have any fillers in them whatsoever. So that's why you'll get pure, strong colors. Okay, so I've got my brush rinsed out, and I'm once again loading from the side and working it into my brush. And I'm going to paint right over top of the yellow layer that we have. And see, this is a transparent pigment. This is a very dark looking pigment, as you can see on the palette, but it's transparent, so that yellow glows right through there. Isn't that beautiful how that works? So when you want to have a glowing color to your background, you've got to start with that glow on the bottom, and you've got to use transparent pigments. That's how that happens. That's how artists get that glow. Whoa! It's not just one color plopped down. It's a series of layers with your brightest color on the bottom, and then it's a series of layers of transparent pigments that allow that glow to show through. And you can see right now how that's working. Okay, for the sake of the video, I'm just going to go ahead and do my layers on the bottom after we finish. But I will do it identical to what I'm doing now. So we need to dry this layer. Once again, I'm going to take my sander and I'm just going to lightly sand so I can continue smoothing off my surface, and it's getting better as I work. My next layer is going to be transparent red iron oxide. Okay, let me put that out on my palette for you so you can see what that looks like. This is more of a brown red, more of a muted toned red. You know, red iron oxide kind of gives you that hint with that name. Okay, I'm cleaning my brush, pinching it down to just dampness. Alright, so once again I'm loading my brush the same way. And I'm going to go right over top of this color. And here we get our toned look, so that we're not so bright. We're darker, we're redder, but guess what? You can still see that yellow glowing through there. You still see that glow, don't you? And we look like a stain. Okay, let me catch my edges quickly. I want to get my brush a little damper. This is a very thick paint, and I would like for it to go on a little easier on these edges because they are not as sanded as smooth as my top is. So by adding just a little bit of water to my brush, it makes the paint slide on just a little easier. Doesn't thin the pigment out, it just thins the paint to a little more workable consistency for these rougher edges. Okay, we're through with our third layer, and I'm going to dry it again. My last layer now is quinacridone burnt orange. As you notice too, as we go through each of these layers, the most paint I had to use was the Indian yellow, because it was sealed wood, but it was kind of raw and it wasn't as smooth as it is now with each layer and each sanding. And as we're painting paint upon paint, then it gets smoother and takes less of the paint as we go in layers. So let's get my brush ready. I'm going to load into the quinacridone burnt orange. And this is our final layer. This brings a little bit of yellow back in because orange is a red and yellow. I'm going to wet my brush just a little. So now we have a very beautiful glowing stain-like look that looks like mahogany. And all we did was paint. We painted 4 layers of transparent pigment over top of each other. We have that inner glow, and we have a beautiful stain color. Gonna finish off my edges. And that's how we do our background. I'm going to dry it one more time. And then I'm going to soft seal it with a mixture of the Deco Art Traditions glaze medium mixed with water. And I do that to make it very thin because it makes it go a long, long way. And also the glaze medium comes as thick as the paint. It's pretty much like paint, just without pigment. And so what this does is gives it a soft seal. It locks in everything underneath this glaze. It's a sealer because if you've done something and you like it, then you glaze over it, and anything you do on top of that glaze will not disturb what's underneath the glaze. So if you've done something really well that you like it, then glaze it, and that preserves it. And this also gives a nice kind of a matte surface to paint on, or to embellish on, or do whatever else you're going to do on it. So that's going to dry, and that's my background. So then what I did was, I've got another one that is finished, that has its background done, and what I did do is I took the autumn page of the Tim Holtz seasonal paper stack. It was from, I think, 2011, maybe, or yeah, it's not this past year's, not this year's, but it's the one that's called seasonal. And I cut this out to fit my plaque. So what I've got here is kind of I made a copy of it so I could work with it to demonstrate it. So it's a little bit not so clear, but it's the same picture, and it'll serve our purposes. So what I did is I took my edger and I roughed up the edges, and then I took gathered twigs distress ink, and I used that around the edges. I put the gathered twigs on the back of this paper, and I rolled up my corners. So I made this look rough, and then I glued it to my plaque. Okay? So that's how I got that there. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to stamp and emboss. So I'm using the Thankful Silhouettes stamp set by Tim Holtz, and I'm using the acorn and the wheat. And oh, let me get some stamp blocks. I forgot to do that. I'm going to move my palette out of the way because we're finished with the paint part. Okay, so I'm going to put this on my stamp block. I'm using Distress Ink embossing ink, but you can use any embossing ink you like. And I'm going to make sure that I've got this thoroughly inked. And then I'm going to stamp it right here. Got some of it on the plaque, most of it on the paper, but you can position it any way you want to. Okay, and then I'm going to got a coffee filter and some gold embossing powder, and I've used kind of an old gold or a dark gold because that's the look I want for my piece. I want it to look vintage, so maybe vintage gold is a good name for this. Okay, you want to make sure that you knock off any extra embossing powder that might be stuck out around the edges. Do that. And right there. And then you emboss with your heat gun. you must continue to apply the heat. Don't wave your heat gun. Just hold it steady. Hold it high enough that you don't burn your paper. But you have to watch carefully and watch how the embossing powder turns color, because that's when you know that it's melted. Now usually I cut out the pieces or the parts of the video where I'm drying or doing embossing or something, but this time I wanted you to see how long it takes. Okay, so now I'm going to ink up my acorn, and I put 3 acorns up on this side. Oh, I slid that one a little bit. I hope I didn't mess it up. Okay, embossed it with embossing ink. And I still have my embossing powder in my coffee filter, so I'm going to go ahead and just like pour it onto my piece right here. Then I'm going to pick it up carefully and slide it around to where I need it to be so that I cover my acorns. And then once again I'm going to just carefully knock off any stray embossing powder that doesn't need to be where it is. I only want the shapes to be embossed. Okay, now I'm going to put this rest of this back into my container. And turn on my heat gun again and emboss. You're going to be careful of your fingers, so if you need to hold something, then be sure and do it with scissors or craft pick or something. You see, it's okay if you have a muted picture or an old picture, maybe a faded picture, because it really just kind of becomes a background. And then I'm going to take 2 small leaves from the Falling Leaves stamp set that's Tim Holtz. It's an older set, but I have used this set just a million times. It's so versatile, and it's an extremely good investment. So I'm going to put one of these on, get my embossing ink again, and I'm going to put these 2 leaves right here at the bottom of my piece. Get out my coffee filter once more. Pour my gold embossing powder. Shake it off. And clean it up. We will emboss one more time. Roll my corner back up there. Okay, now we have our basics on. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to decorate, and I want to add some different colors than the gold to my embossed areas. So I'm going to use DecoArt's Metallic Luster, Iced Espresso, and Copper Kettle. Now, you just use a very, very little bit of this. In fact, I could just use what's out of the lid here. But it's a paste, and I'm just going to put a little bit of it on my finger, just a little. And I'm just going to rub over like the tops of these acorns. I'm going to rub a little bit in to the wheat. Just a tiny little bit. You don't want to overdo this. This is just like a garnish, maybe, if you're thinking of a meal. Just to add some color and some depth. So now that was the Iced Espresso. Now I'm going to use the copper. Again, just a tiny little bit on my hand, and now I'm going to more randomly work this over, and I get some on the paper, but I don't care. You know, that's cool. I like that. Let's come up in here. Don't cover all your gold, just enhance it. You can also put some out here on your plaque. You know what I just noticed? That I glued this to the bottom of my plaque because there's a staple where the hanger was. I was supposed to do it on this side. Wow. Well, I tell you what. I have to find a way to get that staple out, won't I? Okay. Now on this one it's a square, so I added one of Tim Holtz's metallic corners, and I also rubbed the metallic over that. Another place you can rub this is on your upturned corners. You want to accentuate them. Okay. Then it's time to put on your brass. So I have some acorns here, and I liked just kind of adding them in between the embossed acorns, because that made it look like there's 6 of them falling instead of 3. And also you want to clip off the little hanger parts, and I do that with a little piece of pliers. And you just want to take hold of them and clip them off. And that looks better than having that little corner. Okay, so that's how we do that. And then I liked putting a little bit of fabric in on my piece as well. And I bought a stem of leaves, and I just pull pull the leaves off one by one and cut them. So that I can place them any place I want to. So, you see how that works? And that's it. That's really it. You will want to use DecoArt Traditions satin varnish to varnish your plaque around here. And then also what I did with this when I was finished is this looks a little bit browner than this does, and I think what I did is I went over it with Gathered Twigs Distress Ink also at the end. So that's how you do this plaque, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you make one too. I'll see you next week. Bye.